right. Well, here they are, my 12 teams that I have making the college football playoff. You could take a look there. But I'm going to run down. I'm going to start with number 1, and I'm going to talk through the teams that I have making a bye, or a top 4 seed and earning a bye, I should say. So number 1, the Penn State Nittany Lions. That's perhaps a little bit bold. It really shouldn't be when you consider they were in the Final Four last year and they bring seemingly everyone back. Yes, they lose Abdul Carter. That's a defensive end, led the nation in tackles for loss, and that is a big loss. And I expect their defense to take a slight step back as a result. They also lose Tom Allen, who leaves to go to Clemson to become the Clemson defensive coordinator. That's a big loss. But they go out and get maybe the only guy I would say is as good or better. They swipe their arch rival, the Ohio State Buckeyes defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. Not only does that maybe give them some sort of an edge going against the Buckeyes, but they avoid a possible drop-off losing their defensive coordinator. So I think that is huge. And I think that really helps, at least for me, absolve the concerns I would have about the defense. The offense, though, they've got a veteran offensive line coming back. They've got 2 1,000-yard rushers coming back, and Singleton and Allen. And Drew Aller, I know he hasn't come through in some of the biggest games, but they've got a quality quarterback, a veteran. Is this the year he comes through in a big game? We'll talk about that as we go through and pick winners. But I think that's even though it's not a common pick, I think it's a common sense pick. Penn State deserves to be number 1 in my book. Down at the bottom, you see Texas is number 2. The SEC is really deep this year. There's so many teams I could have put in the playoff from the SEC, and I'm sure they'll get 4, maybe even 5 teams. But picking out which ones was tough. Of the upper half or so, I think Texas is probably the cream of the crop. They do lose a real lot on offense, and that offense the offense wasn't great last year. They might continue to be fine, but that defense should be really, really good. And that's something you can bank on. If they've got a good defense, a good running game, and they're well coached, I think that's a pretty good recipe. All right, Clemson Tigers, I have them at number 3. And remember, they've moved away from the top 4 conference champions getting an automatic bye and an automatic top 4 seed. So when I say Clemson's 3, I mean Clemson earned a top 3 seed by merit, not by going 9-3, but still somehow winning the conference. No, that's not what I mean. I mean Clemson earned a top 3 seed. Clemson is also the ACC champion with this pick. This is basically saying and I have a separate video on this. If you haven't already, go watch my regular season predictions for the Clemson Tigers. That's also posted. I'll make sure that links here at the end of this video. But I have Clemson going 11-1, then going to Charlotte and winning there, where Clemson pretty much never loses in Charlotte. So Clemson, number 3. I'll talk plenty about Clemson, so I'll move on for now. And then Georgia, like Texas, I'm not necessarily blown away by Georgia this year. I think, they don't have a top flight quarterback. I don't know that their offensive line is what it was a couple of years ago. I think losing Matt Luke is starting to hurt them now. And losing Monken at offensive coordinator, the OC who coordinated their last national championship. I think they miss him as well. The defense will be salty, and they'll have a lot of talent. I can't imagine Georgia missing the playoff. And I'm going to give them the 4. Although if we scoot back a little bit and look at that 5-12, Notre Dame, Georgia could be a little bit controversial and interesting. You could flip them. I'm sort of just 4 and 5 is kind of a toss-up to me. And that's because, do you want Notre Dame, Boise State again? They play in the regular season. I think Boise State's the best team out of the group of 5. They've won 15 of their last 18 games since they got their current coach. I think it's pretty easy to see them losing to Notre Dame in the regular season, running the table, getting back in the playoff. Now imagine, what if Georgia is the 3 or the 2 heading into conference championship weekend? They lose to Texas. Do you drop them out of the bye because Notre Dame rested while Georgia had to play an elite top 4 team? That feels wrong, but they wouldn't really love a Notre Dame Boise State rematch, so maybe they would. So that's just an interesting little side note there. And then so Notre Dame, Boise State, I know Ashton Genty is gone, and so a lot of people might be down on Boise State for that reason. But you got to consider they return a lot of production, much more than a lot of these other group of 5 teams. Maddox Madsen is back at quarterback. They got 4 starters at offensive line back. I think Boise State's a good team. Shouldn't overlook them just because their star running back's gone. If you have to pick one G5 team, and you do, I think Boise State is the most logical pick. Above that, if you look at the 8-9 game, Oregon was a tough pick for me. Maybe the toughest out of this whole slate. They lose everyone. They lose their quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. They lose their top 2 pass catchers to the NFL and their number 3 pass catcher to an injury, a season-ending injury. They lose a lot. Now, they bring in Mekhi Hughes, a running back from Tulane, who was amazing for the Green Wave last year, so that's a big ad. They have a couple really nice ads in the portal, but I'm not super high in Oregon this year. But when I look at the teams outside of this 12, you're looking at Tennessee, who I also don't love. You're looking at Texas A&M, Miami, Ole Miss is another one. So a lot of teams you could swap in with Oregon. I do like Oregon more than any one of those other individual teams. So I've got Oregon and Arizona State. I ranked in my top 5 in my preseason top 25 poll, which you could see, or I guess just the rankings because it's not really a poll, it's just me. But check that video out. I break it down. They've got a ton of returning talent back. Levitt, their quarterback, by the way, a Clemson fan growing up. I know, again, like Boise State, they lose Cam Scatterbo, their star running back, and so a lot of people might be down on them, but they still bring back more starters and more production than everyone else in that conference. Why would you not pick them, right? So I think, to me, Arizona State's the easy pick in the Big 12. Then going down, Ohio State, Louisville. Ohio State, even though I have Penn State as better than them, or at least beating them and winning the championship, it doesn't mean I'm down on Ohio State. They have to replace a lot. Most notably, they have to replace their quarterback, their offensive coordinator, and their defensive coordinator. And it's traditionally been near impossible to win a national championship when you're replacing more than one of those in the same year. So I'm not high on them to win the national championship, but I respect what that program has become. And they sort of look like they might be, maybe not Alabama when Saban had them rolling, but of that ilk, where every year you should expect them to be a top 5, top 6, top 7, top 8 team. It's going to make the playoff, no worse than, kind of a top 9 seed, top 10 seed, whatever, and probably at least advance to the final 8 because they're just so talented. By the end of the year, they'll figure it out. And by the end of last year, they really figured it out, and they went on to run and win the national championship. Louisville may be the only team on here that's surprising or truly controversial. And I just kind of believe in them. I believe in Jeff Brom. And I know that's a bit of a stretch, but I'm looking for a second ACC team. I don't think the ACC and the Big 12 will be held to only one each. So if I'm looking through the rest of the Big 12, I'm looking through the rest of the ACC. Miami stands out. Duke stands out to me. Georgia Tech's schedule's a little too hard. SMU stands out. But for me, something about Louisville, something about Jeff Brom, Miller Moss, they had a big transfer portal class. They have a somewhat, I don't want to say a favorable schedule because it's tough, but they get Clemson in Louisville on a Friday night. That's winnable for them. That's a perfect situation for them. They do have Miami and SMU, but if they could win 2 out of those 3, I think they're a playoff lock, and I think that's very possible for them. Maybe they beat Clemson the first time, and let's say they lose to SMU, but then they lose to Clemson the second time. So they're kind of like SMU last year, where they're 11-1. But then they lose the championship, but they don't drop all the way out. I could see a very similar fate for them. So I know that one's a bit of a reach, but I think Louisville can make it. And then Alabama, I have questions about their quarterback situation, but they're just really talented. It's hard to really count them out 2 years in a row. And Illinois, they also return a ton of talent, kind of like Arizona State. I could see them taking a step. Luke Altmaier, quarterback I like. He's very good. Seems really grounded in his faith. Seems like he's ready to have a big year, bring a lot of guys back. You trust that defense after they shut down South Carolina and Lenore Sellers. So I like Illinois as kind of my sleeper pick. So here we go. I have one upset here, and that's Arizona State over Oregon. I know not the biggest upset, the 9-8, but as I think about it, I'm not super confident Oregon's going to make it. I feel better about Arizona State making it, which is probably very uncommon to say, but I really like this Arizona State team, and I have questions about Oregon. Yeah, if Oregon makes it this far, they've probably gelled pretty well. So maybe Oregon just has the sheer young talent that they could beat Arizona State. But kind of believe in Sam Levitt. I kind of believe in Dillingham, the coach, and what they're doing, and think they could possibly pull an upset, especially if it was in Arizona. But it is in Oregon, so that's a tough pick. But it's a toss-up. I don't want to go all chalk. So if I'm picking an upset, I don't have a whole lot in here. It's the only one I have in this first round. So I'll go with Arizona State. I think it's very possible. I'm high on them. I've got them in my top 5 in my ranking, so I should be consistent and show it here. Tough one, but I'm going Arizona State over the Oregon Ducks, who lose so much. Notre Dame, I mentioned before that Boise State has lost their last 3 games against Power 4 opponents. I think they lose to Notre Dame to make it 4 in a row. I think they lose to Notre Dame again in the playoff after losing to them in the regular season, make it 5 losses to Power 4 opponents in a row while just dominating their conference. And that's sort of the story for them. Notre Dame has a great offensive line. Jeremiah Love's an elite running back. I like their coaching. They do lose Al Golden and bring in Chris Ash. That could be a downgraded defensive coordinator. Really liked Al Golden in that spot, but I still think they're better than Boise State. As much as I talked about how much I liked Louisville, Ohio State, at this point they should have gelled some, and that talent is just incredible there. And then Alabama, Illinois. If Alabama is good enough to make the playoff, their quarterback situation can't be that bad. I can't pick Illinois to beat Alabama. It's too bold. I don't have it in me. I'm going to Alabama there. So a little chalky, but you got one upset there, and maybe with Louisville making the playoff, and perhaps Illinois too. A little bit of intrigue and surprise there. As we go into this next round, Penn State versus Arizona State. I've got Penn State advancing. They're my number 1 overall seed. Having Arizona State this far is probably a little bit bold. I'm high on Penn State. Look, I know people are down on their quarterback from some big game performances, but I'm not. Trevor Lawrence had a terrible game in that 2019 national championship game. Clemson really could have won that game if he was on point. I don't think we should be down on his legacy, Trevor Lawrence, and I don't think 1 or 2 bad games in big moments necessarily makes you unclutch. You're going to often play worse against great defenses, so it doesn't necessarily make you unclutch. That just makes defenses, good defenses harder. So not sliding Penn State here. I think they're really good. That's why I have them number 1 in my top 25, and I have them number 1 in this playoff, and I have them advancing into the Final Four. Georgia, Notre Dame. Questions at quarterback for each team. I think Notre Dame, if this is a game where it comes down to a battle in the trenches with the new quarterbacks, wide receiver groups that are not super, super elite, if this becomes defense and ground and pound, they did lose Al Golden, but I still think I trust that sort of Big Ten kind of style where it's defense and running. I'll take the team that has maybe the best running back in the country in Jeremiah Love, and always turns out great offensive lines. While Georgia's offensive line, not elite last year. I mean, maybe they looked at against Clemson, but by the end of the year, not running the ball at an elite level, not like Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame might be better than Georgia right now. Georgia's showing kind of the post-championship regression that Clemson had. Will Georgia be fine? Yes. I'm not bashing Georgia, but I've got Notre Dame advancing here. Clemson, Ohio State is a tough one. Ohio State's really, really talented, but I like what Clemson's got at quarterback, a veteran 4th-year QB in Cade Klubnik. He's got the continuity at wide receiver, and which something most teams can't do is Clemson has the talent to stack up head-to-head at receiver with Ohio State's elite receivers. Clemson's offensive line should be better and hold up against Ohio State's awesome defense. Jim Knowles is scary, but you know what? Tom Allen's pretty scary too. This could be a real battle. Clemson has beaten Ohio State before. It's a toss-up to me, but I'm going to go with a better seed. I'm going to go with the Clemson Tigers getting back to the Final Four, which to me is a successful season. You get into the Final Four, that's what I would consider like the true playoff when it was the right size. It wasn't this big bloated 12-team playoff. If Clemson gets back into the Final Four teams, this year is a success. So if my predictions at this point come true, it's been a great year. Then I have Texas versus Alabama. I said I thought Texas was the best of a muddled group towards the top half of the SEC, so I'm going to stick with that. I trust them at quarterback a little bit more, even though we haven't seen much of Arch Manning. We also haven't seen much of Ty Simpson or whoever is starting for Alabama. So who knows? And I trust Texas's defense more, which sounds backwards. Kalen DeBoer is a great offensive mind, and so is Steve Sarkisian. But Texas, I think on defense, is going to be the better team, and so I have them advancing. So now we look at Penn State versus Notre Dame. It's a rematch of last year, but I think now Penn State might be the team with more experience. Penn State might be the team that can win in the trenches. And while Jeremiah Love and that offensive line at Notre Dame is awesome, Singleton and Allen, you got 2,000-yard rushers and a veteran offensive line. Penn State might be even better in the trenches. So that's going to be another battle. sort of a Northeastern / Midwestern ground and pound kind of game. I think Penn State can pull it out this time. So they get their revenge. And I think for them, they're thinking that marks a successful season. And then Clemson, Texas, another rematch from a year ago, although not in the Final Four for that matchup. But Clemson went to Austin and gave Texas a scare, even though last year's Clemson team basically had no running back. They were trying Adam Randall there for the first time with 3 days of reps there. Now Adam Randall will have an entire season, an entire offseason to run the ball against Texas. And they've also got Gideon Davidson. They've got David Iziomume. By this time, they'll have Jay Haynes back. So Clemson will be much better in the running game. Cade Klubnik will hopefully be building upon that great success he had against the Texas Longhorns. So I have Clemson beating the Texas Longhorns here and getting to the national championship. So there you have it. I've got Penn State versus the Clemson Tigers in the national championship. If you're watching this live, leave some comments, leave some questions before we wrap up, and I'll hit them. Don't forget, if you're not already, please subscribe to this channel. Really helps it out. If you're enjoying this video, click the like button, and I appreciate it. Shout out to our sponsor, Ready Vets. They're in the kind of Taylor's area of Greenville. If your dog or cat needs immediate help and you can't get into your family vet, go there. Dr. Capps is a Clemson graduate, a great doctor, and someone you could trust when you need help with your pet. So the national championship is Penn State versus Clemson. These teams haven't played since the 80s. Clemson won. Clemson's 1-0 all time against Penn State. This is, I think, a very even matchup. You got Drew Aller, a veteran quarterback. You got Cade Klubnik, a veteran quarterback. I lean a little bit towards Klubnik. I think he's a little bit more dynamic and maybe to some extent a little bit more trustworthy in big games. But I like them both. I think you lean a little bit Klubnik. Running backs, you certainly lean Penn State with their 2,000-yard rushers. Although, of course, if Clemson's made it this far, someone's emerged or a duo's emerged. Maybe Randall's become a great running back or Gideon Davidson's emerged. I still like David Iziomume. So Clemson should be fine there, but certainly advantage in the run game to Penn State. And then defense, look, I really like Tom Allen. I think that was an absolute steal. Dabo did what I've been begging. Go out, bring in outside minds and talent where you need them. Nothing against hiring appropriately Clemson guys like Ben Boulware. Love that. Bring the intensity to a very specific role. Love it. But when you need to bring in leadership, when you need to bring in new thoughts and new experiences, Tom Allen, amazing fit. So I'm pretty high on this defense taking a big leap, but a big leap might not even be big enough. They've got to take an absolutely huge leap. Last year, Clemson was 85th in rushing defense. They allowed 160 rushing yards per game. And you got to remember that includes playing teams like the Citadel, who ran all over them. NC State, App State, teams that aren't great. So against good teams like Texas, they got gashed. So how much does Tom Allen fix that? Does he get them from 85th to 50th? I think so. Does he get them to 30th? Yeah, maybe. Does he get them to like 25th? Maybe. Does he get them to like 5th or 4th or 3rd in rush defense? That might be a little unrealistic. And I think that not NC State, Penn State, if they can have this elite running back duo, this great offensive line, a quarterback that can make enough plays and is trustworthy, that's tough. If your rush defense against maybe the best rushing offense in the country is average, maybe they keep the ball out of the hands of Wesco and TJ Moore and Antonio. Like maybe they could play keep away and grind it and play that Midwest sort of Big Ten style. I think it's tough. I think this is another toss-up. I have Clemson beating Ohio State, which is kind of a toss-up, and beating Texas, which is kind of a toss-up. I don't have them winning this one, though. Penn State is my number one team in the playoff, the top 25, and I do have the Penn State Nittany Lions winning the national championship. So let me know what you think. Am I being negative on the Tigers? Am I being fair and taking off those orange tinted glasses and making a bold pick that's not always Clemson? I'm high on the Tigers. I think they could reach the Final Four, maybe in the championship game. Absolutely, they could win it. But for me, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions winning the national championship. Join in the comments. Let me know what you think. And of course, if you're not watching this live, stay tuned because we're about to hit the college football playoff draft. So enjoy. So you've got my picks, and we're going to see how many of them I can successfully draft against two opponents. We're going to welcome on to the show Tom, Dianora, and Nick Tully. Guys, I appreciate you being on. Tom, of course, is a friend of the channel. You've seen his writings on Shaking the Southland and his NHL writings on Blue Shirt Banter. Nick Tully, you may know from the Clemson podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts or any podcast app out there. Great show for Clemson football and other Clemson sports. Guys, thanks for doing this again.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Good to be here, Ryan.
Yeah, it was fun last time. This year, it's going to be the same exercise. It's pretty simple. One goal: pick as many teams as you can who will make the 12-team playoff. Last year, Nick Tully and I tied with 3 teams apiece. Tiebreaker went all the way to the national championship. The numbers you see there in parentheses are playoff wins. Ohio State's win over Notre Dame gave me the slight edge. Tom actually was, although that looks bad, it was actually really close until Alabama blew it against Oklahoma. Tom, for a moment there, had the edge. Of course, it looks bad because Florida State had the curse of Tom's third pick, and really wasn't looking like that bad of a pick at the time. But boy, did that sour quickly. Tom, your thoughts on your picks and any other comments on last year before we dive right in?
Yeah, I was really hoping Alabama would cover up that big Florida State miscue for me. But, the way I see it was picking Florida State in some way was a win-win for me because, either they make the playoff and it's a great pick for me, or they miss and that's good because I don't like them. So when they lost that opening game overseas against Georgia Tech, at that point I was like, I hope they go 0-12. So.
And they nearly did. Yes, classic losers insurance. Tully, I feel like you've been waiting a year to take your shots at Tom for that Florida State pick. This is your final chance here.
I think Tom feels the adequate amount of shame. I can sense it in his voice. So I'm not gonna belabor the issue here, but I'm really eager to see where he goes this year and replicates.
We'll see what team gets saddled with the curse of Tom's third-round pick. But without further ado, and I'll put up a draft board as we get a little further on, but we're going to let Tom go first. Tom, you got the first pick in the second annual College Football Playoff Draft. Who are you taking as the most likely team to make the College Football Playoff this year?
Yeah, I know you think this is kind of like a pity play to give me the first pick after last year, but I don't love having it because I don't feel like there's a clear one team that stands out. There were a few that I was considering here, and I did a lot of back and forth. But with that being said, I'm going to go with Texas out of the SEC as my first pick. They got that big opening game at Ohio State. But again, I think that's a win-win for them. It's either going to be a really good resume booster, or if they lose on the road, it's not going to do a whole lot to kill their chances, and they have plenty of time to make that up, and it's non-conference. So later in the year, they have a big showdown at Georgia, but even with those 2 games, I'd be shocked if Texas doesn't find a way into the 12-team field.
Agree. They were second on my board. I have them winning the SEC. That's a rock-solid pick. The team that I'm higher on than seemingly everyone else is the team that I was hoping would fall to me. They did. Penn State, the Nittany Lions, they return just so much production, 2,000-yard rushers. They lost their defensive coordinator, Tom Allen, to Clemson, but they found someone who's every bit as good in Jim Knowles. It feels like a team of destiny for them. I think they could win the national championship, but I'd be really, really shocked if they didn't make the playoff. I've got them with an 80% chance or better to make the playoff. So I feel great about both of those picks. Tully, it's to you.
I'm going to go with the third pick. I'm going to take the Clemson Tigers. Just in terms of the relative opponents in the ACC slate, feeling really good about Clemson emerging from the ACC. I think they're pretty much a lock for at least the ACC title game, and Clemson doesn't lose in Charlotte, guys. So feeling good about that, regardless of how they fare against LSU and South Carolina. The non-con is a difficult schedule for Clemson, so a little bit of risk there, but I do feel good about Clemson. And since I have 2 picks, I put my alma mater and the team I root for the most as the first of the 2. The next up, this is also a tough one for me, but I'm going to go with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Some questions at quarterback there for Ohio State, but just from a high floor and a dependability and a brand perspective, I feel good about Ohio State. They're also the odds-on favorite at this point to make the playoffs as well. So I don't like Ryan Day, but this isn't about who I like. This is about who I like to make the playoff.
Solid picks. They were the next 2 on my board. Was really hoping you would skip over Clemson, as I have them right below Texas. I thought I might sneak one in, but not against a couple Clemson guys. So for my pick, I'm going to go with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I wanted them really bad last year. Tully, you took them and nearly beat me because of that pick. I think it's a rock solid pick. Their schedule is interesting because it's not weak, but they don't have games like Ohio State's playing Texas. They play Miami. They play Texas A&M. So they do still have a decent schedule, but I don't think they'll lose more than one. So I feel really good about Notre Dame cracking the playoff, even if not having a conference championship game precludes them from getting that bye. I'd still be stunned if they don't make it. And honestly, not having the bye could be an advantage for our tiebreaker. So pretty happy to get Notre Dame there. Tom, it's back to you for 2 in a row.
Yeah, so I got a couple here, and I'm going to pick them not in my ranked order just because one team I like a little less. So for the record, we can have them lower down the list. So my first of the 2, I know they're playing tough conference, a couple of the good contenders, but that's what we're going to get to at this point of the draft, right? But I'm going to go with the Oregon Ducks. And then right after them, technically above on my list, but we'll have them lower down on the official list here, is the Georgia Bulldogs.
All right, so it's back to me already.
Tom, what do you like about Oregon there? I'm curious.
I really think Dan Lanning's the real deal. He's one of my favorite coaches in the country, and I just think that program's got momentum, and they're going to find 12-team field. Hard for me to keep them out.
Yeah, to me, this is a really interesting year for Oregon because they lose everybody. They lose their quarterback, their top 3 wide receivers. But kind of to Tom's point, I do think Dan Lanning's for real. This is where we find out, are they so good that they could just lose everyone, kind of like Ohio State, and you're just like, I'm still going to pick them. They're Oregon. If they make the playoff, especially if they're not like squeaking in at, a 10 seed or something, if they soundly make the playoff, they're just a team you pencil in every year from now on because this is a tough roster cycle for them. But maybe they are that good. A team that really up until last year sort of held that same value as Alabama. So I'm going to go with Alabama. To me, there's a little bit of a drop-off after this pick, so I'm glad I was able to get this one here. After this, I have a pretty big drop-off on my list. So Alabama, I'm worried about their quarterback position. Will former Clemson target quarterback Ty Simpson be the real deal? I really have no idea. They could even get in with a game manager as a quarterback, but if they can have just one quarterback be above average, then they sort of become a lock. So feel good about Alabama there for my 3rd pick. And Tully, it's back to you for 2 in a row.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that drop off here after the 8th pick. With that said, I kind of got to go with the team that I think is going to have the best crack in the remainder of the field at a conference championship appearance. And I'm going to go with the Miami Hurricanes. Hard to say because I'm just not so sure about Mario Cristobal, but I'm rolling with Miami here with this pick.
What makes you say that, Nick? How could you be unsure about Mario Cristobal? That's shocking to me.
I do think Miami in the trenches and, just the ACC, everyone talks a little bit about Louisville and Georgia Tech. It is so hard to put my faith in Miami, but we're going with it. Now for the next pick. And again, from here, it's just going to get really interesting where we're splitting hairs here as a team. I'm going to go with Arizona State, guys. I think they also have a good shot at making a conference championship game in the Big 12. They obviously were the winner last year. I think they bring back a decent amount, but I also feel like Kenny Dillingham is one of the better coaches in that conference and is sort of trying to build a little bit of a behemoth in the Big 12 over there. So again, these 2 picks are really more about who I think has the best chance to make the playoffs. The easiest path is to get that, automatic berth by winning your conference. I think either of these teams now, whether they can win that game, we'll see, but injuries happen, crazy stuff happens in this sport that we love.
Yeah, I'm super high on Arizona State. Love that pick. Have them I think it was number 5 in my own top 25. You can see that video on this channel. So I'm really high on them, and I really thought you were going to pass on them. I've got Miami all the way down at 14, so I feel kind of the opposite there. I just don't trust them. But now is where I think, it was a little chalky for those first, 8 picks or so. Now I think it's going to get a little wild, and I'm going to continue the trend of things being a little surprising, perhaps. I'm going Boise State. I think of a team that's going to get an automatic for winning their conference, they dominate that Mountain West. They've won 15 out of their last 18 games, all 3 of those losses to Power 4 opponents. They only play Notre Dame. So I'll chalk up a loss to Notre Dame and figure they'll go 11-1 and be probably a 11 or 12 seed. So I like Boise State to at least make the playoff. Tom, it's to you for 2 picks.
Yeah, I like Boise State too. They were fairly high up my list there. But talking about conference championships, I'm going to go with K-State out of the Big 12. I like quarterback Avery Johnson, not to be confused with the lefty basketball shooter San Antonio Spurs, former Alabama hoops head coach, who killed the Knicks with a game-winning shot in '99 finals. But anyway, not to get off topic. But I think the Big 12 is pretty wide open. I mean, Arizona State's obviously makes sense as a lot of pick coming off last year, but Big 12 is really wide open, and I could easily see K-State, who always seems to be pretty solid, getting into that championship game. And I'll go with LSU out of the SEC for this.
Tom, last time you picked Florida State, kind of going head-to-head against Clemson. I feel like you pick an LSU, could be the curse. It's you've either cursed Georgia with the curse of your 3rd-round pick, or you've cursed LSU by going against Clemson. That gives me a surprise. I'm a little surprised that I'm able to pick this team here. There's a kind of a sneaky fun team I really want, but I can't. I thought I was going to be taking them here, but I'll hope they stick around for one more round. But with my second to last pick, I'll go with Ole Miss. I know they lose seemingly everyone, but of the teams left, I want to pick one of these SEC teams. The SEC is going to find a way to weasel 4 or even 5 in. And the top ones are out. So you're looking at Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, kind of that grouping. I think I like Ole Miss the best of the bunch. So I'll take Ole Miss. I don't feel super great about it, but like having an SEC sort of second-tier flyer there. So I'll take Ole Miss and give it to you, Tully, your last 2 picks.
All right. Ryan, I don't know if this is your super fun team or not, but I'm going to go with Florida. I think this is feast or famine here, guys. DJ Lagway goes. I see Florida potentially competing for an SEC title. And definitely they have a very difficult schedule, and I think they're going to get some points as a result of that from the playoff. And, to your point, Ryan, stacking SEC teams, never a bad policy, never a bad strategy. So going with the Gators, this pick could suck.
It's not a bad strategy. Last year, I figured, hey, I'm going to take shots at the group of 5, and I picked Liberty. I took a shot at Utah out of the Big 12. And I think we all learned after leaving Tennessee out, take your shots at the SEC. That sort of upper middle class. So I think we both have the same strategy there. And even Tom, this whole round has been kind of upper middle class, but not super, super elite SEC. So maybe we've learned.
Yep. A lot of directions I could go here with my last pick. I think I'm going to go with Southern Cal. USC Trojans. A little bit of a flyer, dark horse in the Big Ten. We'll see. I don't trust Lincoln Riley to make me a brisket, but I do trust him to figure out an offense. And he's made some coaching changes, and we'll have to see.
Yeah, I was listening to Greg McElroy's podcast, and he had him like 9 or 10 or 11 in his rankings, and I didn't have him ranked in my top 25 at all. So they're maybe the biggest wild card at all. I didn't have him in my top 29 on this. I had them below Liberty again. But I'm not picking Liberty here because I will get to pick my fun team, who I have all the way up at number 12. That's Illinois. They bring back a ton of talent. That's kind of a theme here. I want Penn State. They bring back a lot of talent. Boise State brings back a lot of talent. Illinois brings back just a lot of veterans. Ole Miss sort of being the opposite, having to rely on the transfer portal. But where I could, I got teams that bring back, especially quarterbacks if possible. Luke Altmaier for Illinois. So I'm happy I got my team, and I'm happy I didn't have to overpay for him. So pretty pleased with my list now. And Tom, you can finish it off. You went first, and you'll end last.
I like it. I like the fun pick there. Now I can go with a fun pick. I had 2 here that are both fun. And I really wanted to go with one of them, but I just can't justify it because it's a little too off the board. So I'll go with the other one. I'm going to go in the group of 5. I'm going to take Tulane out of the American.
Ooh.
I like it.
My other choice was UNLV, but that would be a little crazy. But that would be fun.
I don't know.
fun for them.
You do love Vegas. UNLV would have been a perfectly fine pick too. My other fun ones, just some teams. So last year we missed out on Tennessee. We missed out on SMU. Indiana we missed out on. Next up on my list, some more fun ones I had were Louisville, Indiana, Texas Tech. Those were my next three. Before we wrap this up, any other ones that you're surprised we missed, or how you're feeling about the draft? We'll wrap this up with final thoughts.
Michigan and Texas A&M not on the board is a little bit interesting to me. I think Michigan is very talented. I just think they're going to have to slay one of the giants on their schedule to get enough style points to make it. So that's why I steered clear of them. I thought about Texas A&M. I think Florida is more like a higher ceiling team. That's why I went with the Florida direction. Probably should have taken A&M over USC, but it is what it is.
Gotcha. Yeah. A&M not being on there. Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of people are talking about South Carolina too, but I think all three of us just can't in good conscience pick them.
This has been great. I hope everyone who watched it enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed drafting against you. Thanks again. And as always, go Tigers. Thank you to our sponsor, Ready Vets. If you live in the upstate and have a dog or cat that needs immediate care, Ready Vets is the place to go. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.